I always simplistically, I say we've got a tagline with our charity, and it's pastorally proactive and spiritually reactive, which unpacking that really means pastorally we're there for everyone, regardless of belief, faith, background, whether people have got faith or not. We want to look after them, we want to serve them. But being spiritually reactive, we're just there for the big questions that players or staff have.
Hello everyone and welcome to Onside, where faith meets football, brought to you by Good News Broadcasting. I'm Eamon and with me is my co-host and friend Warner. And on this episode, we have Christian Wienkamp, and he is the Pastoral Support Lead for Birmingham, as well as the Assistant National Director for England for Sports Chaplaincy UK. And he's also West Brom Albion's club chaplain. And so he's here to talk more about kind of his work within kind of sports chaplaincy, as well as his role kind of as a chaplain, and really just highlight the wonderful work that chaplains are doing in the world of football today. So thanks very much for joining us. How are you?
Yes, good afternoon, Eamon and Warner. Lovely to meet you. And it's great to be on your podcast. Thanks so much for inviting me.
No, it's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. And so we'll start off with the two questions that we ask every single one of our guests. And so the first one is, what football team do you support?
This is a bit niche, this one, because before we went on air, I said that I was born and raised in Germany. My family are Borussia Mönchengladbach fans.
Nice.
So
nice.
to keep it neutral, I'll say Borussia Mönchengladbach. I'm not offending anyone here, I don't think so.
Decent team. Good name. What is then your best footballing memory? This might be as a fan or as kind of your role within kind of the world of football, or maybe both. What's your best footballing memory?
Great question. So my first football chaplaincy role was at a club called Gateshead Football Club. And we got to the playoff final against Cambridge in, I think it was 2014. Anyway, the club put me next to the subs bench, so I had such an ideal view of the game. We lost as a club, which wasn't so great, but just being in the National Stadium of England, so close to the touchline, was a phenomenal experience. And yeah, I've been involved in football now for 14 years. I've got so many good memories of certain players who just keep me at the edge of the seat. And yeah, I'm mad for football, love sport in general, but yeah, anytime I go into a football stadium, it's just like a cathedral for me. And I just love watching a beautiful game, really.
That's brilliant. So on the theme of sporting cathedrals, what does a chaplain do in a sports team? Because there might be some people listening and they have a vague idea of a chaplain is a Christian, someone paid to be, they might not exactly know what a chaplain does. So what are some of what's the simplistic way of explaining this is what a chaplain does?
Yeah, really interesting. I'll strip it back a bit. So the charity I work for is Sports Chaplaincy UK. And Sports Chaplaincy UK oversee chaplaincy across the sports industry. So whether that's traditional club chaplaincy like football or rugby or cricket, there's also major games chaplaincy, so Commonwealth Games or Olympic Games, horse racing chaplaincy, motorsport chaplaincy we're growing in, gym chaplaincy is huge. Back to your question, what does a chaplain do? I always simplistically, I say we've got a tagline with our charity, and it's pastorally proactive and spiritually reactive, which unpacking that really means pastorally we're there for everyone, regardless of belief, faith, background, whether people have got faith or not. We want to look after them. We want to serve them. We want to just really encourage them. If that's sitting down with them, if that's helping them on the side of a pitch, whatever that looks like, that's being pastorally proactive. Spiritually reactive, we know there's people of faith within the sports industry. And as Christian chaplains ourselves, we're all volunteers as chaplains. No one within the sports industry as a chaplain gets paid. So it looks very different how often a chaplain is at the club. But being spiritually reactive, we're just there for the big questions that players or staff have. If they're of a Christian faith, then fantastic. There's a lot of chaplains around the country who do pre-game prayers, for instance, or they'll do services or Bible studies outside of the club or inside the club, where other chaplains will just be sat there just asking big questions about life, if players and staff have got them, or signposting them to other faith leaders around the community, if that's what they want as well. So it can look so different, but we stick to pastorally proactive, spiritually reactive. I think that's a good way of remembering things.
And so I was doing some research and I was on your LinkedIn page. I know some viewers will be surprised that I actually do some research. And I noticed on your LinkedIn that one of your first or early kind of roles that you had within football was as an academy and community football coach. And so how did you go from that kind of working kind of on the field with people, teach them how to play football, whatever you were doing, to then kind of going into chaplaincy?
Yeah, some great research, because that was the real start of how my heart changed within the football industry. So I just become a Christian when I was coaching within the academy at Hearts Football Club up in Edinburgh. I'd studied at Edinburgh University. I studied sports management, managed to get a coaching position within the club in the academy. And I just saw, I kind of had an insight in what football was like, the industry. But when I started working at Hearts, I understood the cutthroat, ruthless nature of the industry. And I saw these young boys, mostly, that there were lots of girls teams as well, but I focused on the boys teams, how much their dreams and their hopes were in this one sport, that they wanted to make it. You had the parents on the sidelines who were wanting their kids to make it as well. We've all seen it on a Saturday, Sunday morning, how sometimes parents will live their dreams for their kids, and the kids are doing everything to get to the next level. And it just hit me. I'd recently become a Christian, and I loved coaching. I thought, you know what? I think my life will involve coaching within football in some way. And the more I went through with it, the more I loved coaching, but there was something else on my heart that was just this broken. It's a beautiful industry, but it's a broken industry as well, football. And there's so much that goes on that many of the fans might not see watching Match of the Day or whatever. And it was a period of time when I was coaching at Hearts when the owner, for whatever reason, didn't pay wages on time and salaries, and I couldn't really continue at Hearts. But the industry kept gripping my heart, and as I prayed about the industry, God kept really showing me more and more about the industry as a whole and what it looked like. Yeah, so I was coached there for about over a season, and I couldn't afford to live in Edinburgh anymore. So I ended up moving to Newcastle to help oversee a sports ministry for a wonderful youth work charity called Youth for Christ. So I was based in Newcastle, helping run their sports ministry for Youth for Christ. And still, this industry, this football industry, just wouldn't get off my heart. And I'm like, God, I really want to be an influence for good in this industry. I really want to be used for good in this industry to somehow change the culture. And I kept praying about it. And I heard Newcastle United had a chaplain. Now, I'd never heard of a chaplain before. Hearts didn't have a chaplain when I was there. And so I thought, firstly, what's a chaplain? And secondly, what does a chaplain do in a football club? And I'm sure we've all been there in those moments when we sit down with someone and they just explain their role. And my heart was beating and I was getting so excited. And I just thought, you know what? I think this is what God's calling me into. So the chaplain at the time at Newcastle United said, look, I can see your passion, I can see experience in the industry. Come alongside me. So I just helped him out with various events at the club, got more and more passionate about it. And then just one thing led to another, and I became chaplain to a club called Gateshead Football Club. So I was there for 6 seasons, which was really the domino effect of just God gripping my heart for the industry.
Linked with that, mainly we might be having football fans listening, but as you said, you're also involved in other sports. If someone has that similar kind of thing within them of thinking that they want to be able to reach the sport they love, whether it's football or something else, what kind of pathway would you encourage to being able to become either a chaplain that's a volunteer basis or something more regular? What would that look like for someone now?
One, keep praying about it and see what God's saying about how he wants to use you in that industry. Because I think with professional football, you can easily get seduced into the environment and what comes within the industry. So I'd say be careful that you don't want to just be a football chaplain because it sounds good or because of the perks that might come with it. I think let God break your heart for the industry he wants to put you in and really pray about it. And then seek out advice, seek out from wisdom from those who are chaplains. And I think go on a journey with that. And also don't go for the top clubs because the community clubs on your doorstep, the advantages, the accessibility, and the opportunities to serve people. And at the end of the day, that's what we want to do. We want to serve people and we want to love people where they're at, whether it's Manchester United or whether it's your local football club. The opportunities and the people are the same. It might look different, but the opportunities are incredible to serve people at your local community club. So just knock on doors and understand what chaplaincy looks like, and then knock on your community door and say, look, is this something you're interested in? Let's explore what that looks like.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you so much for that. So, as Eamon mentioned, you're Assistant National Director for England and Pastoral Support Lead for Birmingham as well. So, what does your role, especially particularly with Sports Chaplaincy UK, entail? And what are some of are there any differences between those roles, or is it quite a synonymous thing? Or do you find you have to kind of wear one hat for one area, another hat for another area?
I moved down to Birmingham a week before the pandemic, so perfect timing to move to a new city and start life
Just
again, right?
made it.
So I moved down to Birmingham and I was given the title of Assistant National Director for England, but also Pastoral Director for Birmingham, because at that time, the Commonwealth Games were coming to Birmingham. And I was given the brief to help oversee chaplaincy for the Commonwealth Games. So that was a really exciting part to move to Birmingham in a pandemic and everything. Once we got out of that, it was a really great opportunity to build connections with other ministry leaders in Birmingham, pastors in Birmingham, really just have dialogues and communication about what chaplaincy at the Commonwealth Games could look like. And we ended up being able to oversee chaplaincy within the villages of the Commonwealth Games. And we had an area called a faith and well-being area. So there was 3 athletes villages in the Commonwealth Games, and we had a team of about 25 faith and well-being kind of chaplains in there, kind of looking after the athletes. So that was kind of where that role came from. And from that, I'm just trying to build connections with those, well, everyone in Birmingham really who has a heart for chaplaincy in sport, and just sit down with them as like, how can we use chaplaincy to bless this city and wider in the West Midlands? Then the assistant national director really role. So my manager, Matt Baker, he's the Charlton Athletic chaplain, and he also oversees chaplaincy across professional football. And that's my role, just supporting him. So helping him make sure that every professional club in England has a chaplain. If they don't, try and knock on the doors of those clubs, but also support all the chaplains in professional football as well and wider afield. So it kind of all molds into one. I think if I was to say, if you were to ask what is my role, it's just to develop sports chaplaincy across the nation and really inspire people, encourage people, train people, and support them in their role.
Out of all the kind of professional clubs in the UK within football, what's chaplaincy look like? Are the most of the clubs have chaplains, or is it kind of half and half? How does it look?
So if we look at the 92 professional teams, we've got over 80 chaplains now.
Wow.
And some clubs might have more than one chaplain. I think that's what we're looking at the minute, trying to get a team of chaplains in one club. So it's not just one person trying to influence the whole base. But I think a lot of the clubs are now in the minority, where they hear about chaplaincy and we can say, look, most of the clubs in your league now have a chaplain. Is this something we want to explore? But it's not a necessity for clubs. So we are supported by the Premier League, the PFA, and the EFL, and they really back us and help us to do what we do. And they really give all the backing to us as a charity. But still, there's some clubs that don't have a chaplain because it's not written in any kind of legislation, not like prison or healthcare or some industries, there has to be a chaplain. That's not the case yet in football. So it's very much relationship based. We know the industry that a manager's tenure is 18 months. The players are coming and going to all the different clubs. So it's what relationships have we got in clubs that don't have a chaplain? And can we use those relationships to try and get an open door or find a person of peace to kind of explain what chaplains is about and try and get a chaplain involved, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's excellent. It's good to hear that a lot of the clubs kind of have a chaplain, but as well that you're being backed and supported by kind of the EFL, Premier League, and things like that, which is excellent. And so one of the things you said there is that kind of within legislation, within prisons and healthcare, there has to be a chaplain. I think for me personally, and maybe for people listening as well, my perception was chaplaincy is kind of for prisons and within hospitals and things, because there are people there with kind of serious needs. And so what is kind of the need really for chaplains within football clubs?
I think across football, it's all about performance. And I think if you look at who's employed at a football club, it is all geared towards performance, whether it's the manager, the physios, the coaches. Most roles in football is all about the 3 points on a Saturday or whatever day they play, right? And I think that the chaplaincy role is very different because we're independent. We're not employed by the club. Of course, we care about our teams doing well. Of course we do. We're human. but also we're not there for the 3 points. We're there for the holistic well-being of the individual, whether that's the CEO, whether that's the player, or whether that's the head chef or the cleaner. And I think chaplains across the country would share the same, that they're not there just for the star player, they're there for the cleaner as well. And we're there for everyone involved in that football club. And I think that's why it's such a blessing to be part of, because it's so countercultural in football. Why do you want to be here and you don't get paid? And sometimes you can be sat there with multi-million-pound signings, and you're there. Well, I care about you, and I want to pull the gold out in you, and you're more than what you do. And I think just to encourage people where they're at, and a player who's on the injury bench, and previous week 60,000 people have been singing their name, and then next week they can't walk properly or whatever, or they're out for a year, or many times in football clubs, staff will get laid off, or they won't get paid their wages. Is examples of that now in football. And as a chaplain, to sit there and just be able to listen to them. We're not the saviors. We often signpost people to other organizations who can do so much better than us. But to sit down and have no agenda, but just to listen to people and encourage people where they're at, is a wonderful role to play, I think.
That's brilliant. And I think one of the things is that I find is that obviously there's been an increase in different players from different backgrounds and people of different religions who are playing as football players being vocal about their own religions and things. So how do you find being a chaplain, being, as you've spoken about, kind of coming from a place of my intention is that I care for you as a person, as opposed to kind of all these ancillary things? How do you find relating to people or players or staff members with different religions or from different backgrounds that isn't, quite the normal thing that you might experience?
Sure, there's a lot more players and staff within the game who would profess to have a faith or religious background, and that's fantastic. It's great starting point for conversation. I think as a chaplain, I certainly always train people not to just head for the Christians, head for the easy chats, head for the easy wins, because we're all on a journey, right? It's such an encouragement to just sit down with anyone part of the club and just be able to listen to their massive questions about life. And there are chaplains, of course, who are available for Bible studies and prayers, and it really encourages Christian players. But there's also a lot of staff and players who haven't got Christian faith, but really need encouraged or really need signpost, as I said before, to other faith leaders. I don't really know if that answers your question, but there's so many people of faith now in football and in sport in general, not just for Christian faith, but yeah, I always find it's a great starting point. And people of other faiths, I'm a Christian, but those who aren't Christians but follow another faith, they seem to have a lot of respect for Christian chaplains as well. They'll happily sit down with me and talk about their faith and their religion and their backgrounds. And fantastic, what a starting place for a conversation. We might not agree on everything, but also we're not there to proselytize and preach at them and try and convert them. That's not what we're about. And I don't think that's honoring the club either. We're there for the holistic person, and it's all about relationship. And however we can enhance relationships and build relationships and cohesion within the club, I think that's a good thing.
I must commend you and kind of the work that you guys are doing, because clearly you're there from the kind of the multi-million-pound signing all the way down to the cleaner, and you're interested in the person, and it just sounds like a wonderful thing. And I can understand why chaplains have been kind of really highly praised within kind of the conversations that we've had. So when it comes to like foreign ownership, though, because a lot of clubs have nowadays got foreign owners. We know that some Premier League clubs have ownership from kind of countries within the Middle East. And I know that obviously Manchester United, my team, were nearly bought by the Qataris not long ago. And so with that kind of foreign ownership, who may not kind of understand what the chaplain does or may have different faiths and beliefs and different things like that, you don't have to name clubs and whatever else, but has there been any pushback at all from ownerships on the work that you guys are doing?
Yeah, of course. There's a lot of questions and a lot of, how do I say it? There can be obstacles as well. We train sports chaplains every other month, and one of the training modules we share is about the game Snakes and Ladders that we probably all played as a kid. Not that I'm calling people snakes, of course not, but it's just a kind of an analogy that in sports clubs, football clubs in this example, there can be snakes on a ladder where you feel like you're really doing well, chaplaincy wise in a club. You've built great relationships. The owners really understand, and a new owner comes in and has no experience of chaplaincy. They don't have a clue what the word chaplain looks like. They don't have a clue what your role looks like. They just see you wandering around the club thinking, who is this guy? Or who is this lady that is just aimlessly wandering around the club? And there's no tangible kind of quantifiable things that they can bring back. And they own the club. They've got every right to say, no, we don't see the need for this, get out. But it's all about building relationships from ground zero. And while the snake, there's also a ladder. And those we call people of peace, that they just understand chaplaincy. They've experienced chaplaincy, they might understand Christianity, and they just see the benefits and the values of chaplaincy. And they're there, oh, let me introduce you to this person. Oh, I know the owner really well. Let me introduce you to the owner, and you can sit down and have 20 minutes with them and explain what you're there for. It can change so quickly. So West Brom for me has been a really inviting club. I was the first chaplain in about 15 years. So it was kind of starting chaplaincy from the ground level again and building those foundations. And you have to be very intentional as a chaplain where you can't sit in a room waiting for people to come to you, because that's not how chaplaincy works. It's all about relationship and being present on a consistent basis. So for me at West Brom, I turn up every week, go to the training grounds, get to know all the players and all the staff. And then I go across to the stadium, get to know all the stadium staff as well. And it's always going through the motions of introducing yourself, what chaplaincy is. And sometimes you've got a minute, 2 minutes to explain your role. And you've got to do it really succinctly and really engaging so that people actually understand why you're there and why you keep turning up. But at West Brom, I've been through, I think, 3 CEOs, 5 managers, and countless first team players in 3 seasons. And most football chaplains will times that by 10. And so we're looking at West Brom, looking at being bought. A new owner is going to come in. We don't know who it's going to be. We don't know when it's going to happen. So in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, right, I've got to try and sit down with a new owner and explain what my chaplaincy role is. Like, when will that happen? I'm not sure. Will they want me? I don't know. And so there's all these unanswered questions where, of course, I'm biased. I understand the values of chaplaincy, but the new owner might not. So, and that happens in every other club. So you just got to be really prayerful and really led by the Holy Spirit, and just like, God, you've got me here for a reason. And I've got to hold this very lightly, because I could be gone tomorrow. But what can I do, and how can I add value to people's lives in the time that I'm at the club?
Speaking of prayer, we like to end our time with our guests by asking 2 final questions. So the first question is, what is exciting you about what God is doing at the moment in the world of football? It could be specifically chaplaincy related or just something else that you see is happening.
Yeah, 2 things really. God's always at work within football, and we just get to partner with him in what he's doing. God, what are you doing and how can I help? Is often my prayer when I go into a training ground or stadium. And it's probably the staff and the players asking big questions, understanding that I care about them and want to encourage them. And then why do you do what you do? And there's countless opportunities to share my story with them and testimonies with them. And then I guess that the second thing that's really challenging but really encouraging is there's so many situations in chaplaincy that changed my heart and changed my character. Whether it's pushback from people, whether it's just obstacles, whether it's a bit of persecution, you just like, God, it's so easy for you to take these people away or for you to change the situation. But God is like, yeah, but I want to do something in you. And that's the hardest thing. Like, but I don't want my character changed. But it's like, but that's going to grow you more than just removing the situation or the barrier. So as much as I don't like it, I feel like I'm in a real season where God's changing me instead of the situation.
I think that's relatable for a lot of us in different situations. And lastly, what can we as football fans, Christians, what can we be praying for you as Sports Chaplaincy UK and all the different chaplains kind of in our world of sport in this country?
Yeah, thank you. There's a real opportunity at the minute to grow in so many areas within the sports industry. 3 big areas. Be praying for gym chaplaincy. You're part of a gym yourself, and you could see yourself as a chaplain in that community. Fantastic opportunity for meeting people where they're at. Golf, we really want to increase chaplaincy in the world of golf, and also motorsport. we've got a fantastic opportunity where we've got a motorsport team at the minute doing fantastic work at Silverstone and around the racetracks in England specifically. But is that something you could offer your time to as well? Join any of those teams. So yeah, get in touch with us at Sports Chaplaincy if that applies.
That's a wonderful place to kind of end this. And I must say, as we said before, even within this podcast, every time we kind of had these conversations with players and other staff, the one thing that they've highly praised is the work of chaplains. And so we want to say a big thank you to you and kind of the work that you guys are doing. You're doing a fantastic job, and there's nothing but praise for kind of the work that you guys are doing. And so we'll be obviously praying for you within the world of football. And so if you want to kind of get plugged into more of what Sports Chaplaincy UK do, you can simply just visit their website, sportschaplaincy.org.uk. There you'll find everything that you need to hear more about them, get plugged into the work that they're doing. Thank you again, Christian, for coming on this podcast. We really do appreciate your time. And if you're listening to this and you want some more biblical-based podcasts and programs, you can just simply head over to the GNBA website, and that's gnba.net. That's gnba.net. But thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.